Well, good afternoon. I come from Egypt, the historic land of all religion, the land of the Nile, the land of the pyramids, the land of history, and the land of civilization, the land of long-standing peace and harmony. Looking to the world today, I can but not ask the question of what's wrong with the world and what's wrong with Egypt. And allow me to ask you, are we doing well? Can we do better? Today I have one message. It's about the better world. And it specifically about that we need to act to make this world better. It's about a dream. And every one of us, I see today, about contributing to a better world. Allow me to, for the sake of time, to share with you the rest of the talk in an SMS format so that we go straight to the point. The first is about the better world. Do we have religious freedom in this world? Do we have economic freedom? Do we have social freedom? I feel that we are today, I am for sure, have less freedom than I used to have years ago and decades ago. And I think what we need to do before we go out of here today is that we think, what can we do together to fix this world and to make it better and to make sure that tomorrow is going to be better for our kids than what we see today. My first SMS is about a story, about the information age and about freedom. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, I went to MIT, being a product of the education system of Egypt that I'm privileged to be. And at MIT, I joined a group of leaders in research and education and in knowledge that every day they are trying to ask a question and think about how to answer it. The question that I shared with them is how IT, later on called ICT, can help contribute to economic development and social development. And the two words that I added, how can this accelerate economic and social development in developing countries, where I come from? After graduating and getting an advice to go back, and I had a dream during my studies about building what we call it a center for information and decision support systems, which was en vogue at the time, contributing primarily to corporate America and multinationals. And it was the first time a crazy person went and tried to apply it for a government and for a nation. Well, 15 years later, we delivered a center and 1,500 next to it. A center in the cabinet of Egypt, in every ministry, in every governorate, in every province, in every city, and in 1/3 of the villages, 1,300, a total exceeding 1,500. Out of 900 projects, they started from a simple dream around contributing to the economic and social development of the country, around issues like facing every government in the world, like debt management, budget deficit, balance of payment, etc., etc. Issues that contribute to economic reform. Unfortunately, in the developing world, where Egypt was the case, data were rich, but information was very poor. Accordingly, decision-making does not rely on information, but rather on intuition. It's simply, without going into details, a mess. And from a mess to a mess. That was the typical nature. Building the data bit by bit around every issue and in every government organization and pulling it together was a start of illuminating a country and providing support around strategic issues and around issues that started to fuel the engine of development. 15 years later, the country was enjoying the fruits of building one-of-a-kind information infrastructure that did not only contribute to economic growth, which was basically started to pick up to 3%, 4%, 5%, 7%, and so on, but rather in showing the reality of what the country is socially. I mean, how the duality, the discrepancy between the rich and the poor, the urban and the village, etc. Almost every single thing was there. Any parameter you wanted, there, and timely. By the end of the 80s, this provided a promise for a country that could have been on the path to be not only a developing country, but going into the developed country roots. However, the lack of political rationality and societal integrity and social, justice and sensitivity, and I would say religious freedom, have been together contributing negatively to what happened in the following decade, and then preparing as well for the revolution later on. What happened was simple and basic. There were poverty, but politicians didn't like to hear the word poverty. There was a very specific poverty map. There was illiteracy. After 30 years of governance of a regime and 60 years of a revolution that promised getting rid of illiteracy, there was 30% illiteracy. There was a drop in the quality of the education from being on the top of what Egypt used to do in the mid of the century to being at the last 10 in the quality of the education, number 129 out of 134 across the country. While having a great information and technology on infrastructure on the one hand, we didn't have the quality education on the other hand, and so on. At the same time, with poverty, there was an underground buildup of a religious infrastructure that was politically motivated. And guess what? 10 years later, poverty and technology, and they say the internet made the revolution, a great revolution on January 25th. However, 3 weeks later, it was kidnapped by those who are basically trained and more powerful underground and above the ground. And look at what Egypt is today. If we look at the region, I'm talking the Arab world, is facing similar challenges. Today, this region is 370 million. By year 2050, it will be doubled. This region enjoys the highest growth rate in the world, between 1.7 to 2.01, most of the countries in the region. It will be doubled. There will be almost 400 million more. This requires 400 cities, each one of them is 1 million, or 800 cities, each one of them is 500,000, or 1,600 cities, each one of them is 250,000. 2 of them only are under development today. These 400 million more require 100,000 schools, and hopefully schools that will build a new generation rather than that basically compete with knowledge to build economies that basically are at par with the world rather than creating and generating hunters that go for the easy bullets to destroy the world. This multiplier can represent an opportunity for the world, can represent an opportunity for Europe, because the investments and the industries required to be built exceed $10 trillion in the next 40 years. And 40 years in the time span of development is tomorrow. And we need to do it today. And guess what? The only way that I can see that this can be done is through knowledge. Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. If we empower the have-nots in the world, we can get at par competing for the best of the world. But if someone is hungry or illiterate or he doesn't know, we cannot talk about a better world. We cannot talk about religious freedom, but because someone is using that group, these countries, in a different way from what we're talking about here. So how can we do that? I think we need to think about the dream that every one of you has. How can we fix the political framework of countries and of the world? How can we fix the economy and financial system of countries and the world? How can we basically make sure that the knowledge gap is minimized and that basically we are overcoming the divide? There is a lot that we can do in every area, but I feel that we are still shy from doing the real actions that are needed. I don't understand, for example, how can, with more than half a century of United Nations, we allow regimes to stay more than 30 and 40 years in power, and we don't call it dictatorship, but after they go away? How can we allow, having at the 21st century illiteracy, with the exception of the Millennium Development Goals, effort to be prevailing. How can we allow, countries in Africa or countries in the Arab world having such shortage of basic service like health, where, for example, in Malawi, you have a doctor per 50,000. In Mali, the spending is 1/1,000 what's been spent in Canada. In Egypt, it's the same between what's being spent in Cairo or in Upper Egypt. There is a lot of disparity in the world. We are trying to solve small problems, but I think with the resources that we have, and even if they are limited, we can think about how can we address major problems today. So the question is, can we think together? Can we dream? Can we learn? And can we think? And can we act about making this world better? I think the starting point is here. To think about it and to make sure that what we built is going to build a harmonious world, a world that's economically developed, that enjoys happiness, that enjoys prosperity, that enjoys knowledge, justice, as well as religious freedom. Thank you very much.
Hisham El Sherif. Thank you.